Hey guys, tonight we continue our journey into the ashes of lost knowledge, exploring libraries that vanished in smoke and left humanity with only whispers of what once was. After the tragedy of Alexandria, the pattern repeats itself across the centuries, as if history loves to remind us that collecting too much knowledge in one place can be dangerous. Let's drift east to Nalanda, in India, a sprawling university and library complex established around the 5th century, with towering lecture halls, banyan trees, and multiple buildings stacked with manuscripts on medicine, astronomy, philosophy, and languages. One of these library buildings was said to be 9 stories tall, and in the 12th century, the conqueror Bakhtiar Khilji allegedly set it on fire. Some accounts claim the flames burned for months, consuming scroll after scroll, though historians debate the exact duration. Still, the image of centuries of wisdom dissolving into smoke lingers, a quiet tragedy of knowledge lost to human ambition and conflict. Now, let's float west to Baghdad, where the House of Wisdom thrived during the Islamic Golden Age. Scholars translated texts from Greek, Persian, and Indian traditions, creating a center of learning that drew mathematicians, philosophers, and poets alike. In 1258, Hulagu Khan's Mongol forces sacked the city, and legend says they dumped the library's books into the Tigris, turning the river black with ink. Whether literal or not, the story endures as a haunting symbol of what happens when knowledge is treated as fragile and disposable. Across Alexandria, Nalanda, and Baghdad, a common thread emerges. Libraries, no matter how grand, are dependent on human care. Fires, neglect, political upheaval, or simple decay can erase centuries of wisdom in a single generation. And sometimes, as with Alexandria, the destruction we mourn may have begun long before the flames, with crumbling scrolls, forgotten shelves, and slowly fading knowledge. As we drift through these vanished libraries, imagine rivers of ink, smoldering towers, and shelves collapsing quietly into time, leaving only legends, myths, and echoes for us to ponder. The loss of these libraries reminds us that knowledge is never guaranteed. It must be tended, passed on, and remembered. Otherwise, it can vanish in smoke before we even notice it. Floating onward from the monumental losses of Alexandria, Nalanda, and Baghdad, we find that history is littered with smaller, quieter library tragedies, collections that never made legends but still vanished with a faint sigh. Monastic libraries across medieval Europe often held priceless manuscripts, from illuminated gospels to obscure philosophical treatises tucked away in abbeys and cloisters. These scrolls and codices depended on monks who, for the most part, were diligent but sometimes human error. Damp cellars or tiny kitchen fires spelled disaster. Imagine a monk leaving a candle too close to a shelf, or water seeping through a stone wall during a storm, soaking vellum and ink until the letters blurred into illegibility. Hundreds of years of careful copying could be undone in moments, leaving only charred or soggy remnants behind. Some royal archives fared little better. Kings and nobles, eager to hoard legal records, treaties, and family histories, often stored them in castles that were dark, cold, or prone to siege. A single rebellion, a careless servant, or even rats gnawing through parchment could wipe out centuries of meticulous record-keeping. In a sense, the disappearance of knowledge was rarely dramatic. It didn't always require blazing fire or Mongol conquest. Sometimes it simply happened slowly, quietly, while people argued, feasted, or slept in the rooms above the manuscripts. And yet, human imagination tends to romanticize these events. A smoldering tower is more cinematic than mildew-stained scrolls. A Mongol invasion is more memorable than a leaky roof. And so, the myth of lost libraries grows, even when the actual loss was far more mundane, yet equally tragic. As we drift through these faded collections, it's worth noting another pattern. Many vanished libraries were connected to centers of power, education, or religion. Places where ideas concentrated also became places of risk. Alexandria, Nalanda, Baghdad, and countless European monasteries remind us that knowledge, no matter how grand, is always precarious. And perhaps the most haunting part is not the loss itself, but the gaps it leaves. Works we will never read, thoughts we will never trace, questions we cannot ask. Each vanished library becomes a ghost, haunting the modern imagination, whispering what we might have known if only someone had preserved it a little longer. As we drift closer to the present, these whispers remind us that the preservation of knowledge is not automatic. It is an act of care, attention, and sometimes sheer luck. Without it, even the most brilliant ideas can dissolve into smoke, leaving only stories for us to tell.